Johnny here for Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. So we've got a bit of a weird video tonight because I'm going to be fulfilling a very important promise that I've made to you in the past. But first, I do want to say that we are going to be talking about the 2022 Ford Maverick changes you need to know about, changes that you need to make. I didn't, in the last video, I really didn't fully think about it. I didn't fully explain what you need to do with the changes to the order guide. So shame on me, but this is why while editing, I got the formal details. I made sure that this information is, as correct as possible. So what are you going to do with your whole Lux package changes, and what are you going to do with the accessories and the options that have been removed? Well, I'll let you know in just a moment. But first, I do want to say Prost, happy weekend to everyone. And very important to me, I want to just, quickly review what we talked about the other night and let you know what to do with the 2022 Ford Maverick changes. So that shows up in the order guide. It's the most recent order guide that's come out. Now, first of all, let's go over what's pretty easy and straightforward. All the late availability has been removed. So we don't have to worry so much about mud guards, for example, molded mud guards. That's what protects your paint from stone chips. You don't really have to worry about those anymore. Because before, if you put it on your order, you just would not get built because something in your order was unavailable. Now, that's all available, except cargo management system mounted crossbars are no longer available at all. And I'll let you know what you need to do. Also, the bed divider is no longer available whatsoever. Zero availability. And for now, that means you need to, call up your dealer. This should hopefully be removed from your order automatically because it's, just not available for what looks like the rest of the year unless, they come out with another order guide and they say, hey, it's back. But for now, those two things are gone. So let me repeat, you need to call your dealer and make sure that this does get removed from your order so that, the system isn't picking up your Maverick order because it sees that just one thing, either, the cargo management system mounted crossbars or the bed divider, either of those things, they could be waiting on those things arriving to actually schedule you. So you need to call your dealer, make sure those are removed. They're not available at all. It's not a late availability, it's a zero availability. Now, here's the thing. Speaking of availability, there has been a change to the luxury package. So the XLT luxury package is updated to include a hard drop in bed liner, and the spray in bed liner is removed from that option. Now, I didn't mention what to do with this information and what it implies. And this is really important. So let me be really clear because I wasn't the other night. I'm sorry. So this is me fulfilling my promise. I've said in the past, if I get something wrong or if I don't explain something properly enough, and I saw that in the comments section, really appreciate the people that went out of their way to ask the question, hey, John, what's going on? Johnny, what's going on with, my bed liner? This is what's going on. If you already have a build date assigned, so either a build date or a VIN, if you already have a VIN, you're in the clear. You're getting a spray-in bed liner with the XLT luxury package. But if you don't have a VIN and or a build date, it would actually be more, you probably have a VIN and maybe not a build date. But either way, if you don't have at least one of those two things, build date or VIN for your 2022 Maverick, then yeah, when they assign you a build date, it's going to be based on the latest order guide. And that's, I'm 99.9% sure about this. I did as much verification as I possibly could. But of course, one thing I couldn't do yet is really see, how this works in the system. But I can tell you based, historically at Ford, if there's a change on the order guide and you don't have a VIN number, if you have a VIN number, you get how it was. Your recipe's in. But if you haven't been given a VIN yet, you get it based on the new recipe. So you'll get a plastic, they call it a hard drop-in bed liner. And I wish it was just called a plastic bed liner or plastic inner box cover because I think the word hard throws off some people. But anyways, that's just your plastic bed liner. And it has all sorts of advantages. It is a little slipperier if there's a bit of snow on it, but it also means you can get ice out of it more easily. If you spill paint or oil, you can get that off And if ever, it gets to be really worn out, you can just easily pull it out and put another one in. So it's not the end of the world. And, back to what I said the other night, I do want to emphasize this. Additional options. Anything you can get from your dealer, if you have these on your build or you're going in to order, ideally, I personally wouldn't add extra options because I'm in a hurry. I'd like to get my Mary's Maverick as soon as possible. But, if you really are willing to wait, get your Maverick just the way you want it. But if you want to get it sooner, go in, make the changes to your order. And when you're in to order up at the parts department, the parts and extra little options that you want, get it from the parts department so you get your Maverick as soon as possible, because they will build your Maverick when all the parts are available for your Maverick. If there's parts missing, well, they'll build another buildable, which means parts that they actually have to build that Maverick with. Well, they'll quite possibly pass someone in front of you. It happens. So let's now get to the regular show. Let's just get right into all sorts of electrification talk and the future at Ford. Now, I'm sorry, there will be a clothing change because this was about me fulfilling my promise to you, and that's that when I have information, I'll get it to you as quickly as possible. Sometimes people get upset with me and leave the comment that I haven't given out an answer yet, for example, to why exactly the hybrids will only start getting delivered in January. Well, I probably have to do a whole other video on that, but simply put, I don't have the answer, and very few people do have the answer. The only people that would have the answer to that would be a very select few people at the very top. And well, they're not telling us. I can speculate, and I've said it in videos before. I do speculate what it is, but I'll cover that probably when I go through, step by step, the order guide and what comes with a Maverick and on what trim level, because there's been a lot of confusion behind that, and I get all sorts of questions, and I love answering your questions, but I'd like to answer them all in one video. So let's just get to the regular programming. Thank you. Johnny here for Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about electrification and the future at Ford. So of course we're going to be talking about the Ford Escape plugin that I test drove. And if you haven't catched that video yet, please click on it. You'll see how great the drive on the Escape plugin was. We're going to be talking about Blue Oval City. So where is Ford going with all this electrification hoopla? Well, I think they're going pretty far. I think we're going to be seeing a plug-in Bronco, and actually I'm positive we're going to be seeing a plug-in Bronco. So we'll be getting to all sorts of talk about, plug-in or hybrid models coming up at Ford that I highly suspect. I'll explain to you why I highly suspect it. So let's just jump right in, talk about electrification and also, some technology that's coming down the road, such as, graphene manufacturing, as well as Ford and Purdue and what they're doing in regards to, being able to charge much, much faster, because that is really the big hindrance to electric vehicles at the moment is, who wants to sit around for 30 minutes? We don't have a whole lot of time or patience, and that's why I'm trying to make these videos, keep them under definitely 20 minutes. But speaking of impatience, are you gonna, once you have your Bronco or your Ford Maverick, your 2021 or 2022 Ford Bronco, your 2022 Ford Maverick, are you gonna have Bronco brain? Or if you have a hybrid Maverick, are you gonna have hybrid head? So what are those? Let's start off with that right now. So Bronco brain. I think I have Bronco brain, and what this is, well, that's my experience today being in traffic. I made the big mistake of, instead of driving around the city, I figured, hey, I'll cut my mileage in half. That's better for the environment, and it'll be about the same length of time. Well, it took me almost three times longer to get home. Traffic's real bad because some cities have yet to work on the timing of their lights so that the main roads, let the traffic pass through, and only, put that main section of traffic on red lights when there's actual cars on the side. So, did all sorts of stopping for nothing, all sorts of ridiculous traffic, and I have Bronco brain. So I get frustrated if the light turns green and I'm at the beginning of a bridge, in that not only, ideally, if we're an organized people, we'd all hit the grass gas when we'd see the green light go. Green light, gas, we'd all hit it at the same time, and we'd move forward. And that's actually going to be the future of autonomous driving. With autonomous driving that, takes information from the road, pretty much when a light turns green, one day all the vehicles are going to move forward. So that's really going to cut down on traffic. I highly expect that to happen. But here's the problem with Bronco Brain. You've got this big, high vehicle. So every time I was in traffic, the little divider, the little whatever it is, 8 inches of cement, boy, was I ever tempted to just do a U-ey, just drive over that, do a U-ey, and go take the lane that had no traffic so that I could go take a different route. Because when I go through the city, I have about 9 or 10 different routes that could be taken. And I did want to pop that and get back on the highway, which I didn't expect to have happen. I think part of Bronco Brain too is, when you're in the woods, you'll be asking yourself, I'm pretty sure I can get across that. Yeah, I could get through that mud. I could climb that hill. But in the city, it's a little more dangerous. And I think part of Bronco Brain might also be that some people are going to want to corner really slowly because they see this vehicle as being very wide and very high. And it is high up. And that's why I did the other video, the video the other day on Bronco handling and rollover. I want to show you that you don't have to go through corners and build up traffic. So part of Bronco Brain, I think, is, being a little impatient and wanting to take alternative routes because your machine can handle going over pretty much anything the city is going to throw at you. Now, hybrid head. Well, I think we've all seen this for years. We've been stuck behind someone who's in a hybrid who, because, they're watching the little screen and trying to gain their little leaves on the screen, they're going really, really slow. They're accelerating really slowly. They are, letting off the gas really early to recharge their battery. And essentially, they're just creating a whole lot of traffic. Real frustrating for Bronco Brain back there. Real frustrating. I just want to remind people, as we move towards electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, with a hybrid, if you accelerate quickly and then let go of your pedal because you've, attained more than the actual speed you needed, you're still going to get, really good miles per gallon. You're going to get fantastic fuel efficiency. I had my Lincoln MKZ 2017 hybrid. And I was pedal to the metal in that all the time. And I had fantastic fuel economy because I'd accelerate really quickly, which is not good for fuel economy. But because I'd get up to speed, I would also then, let go of the pedal and the battery would recharge so much that then I'd be on electric power from the battery for a while. So, that's not perfect data-driven evidence, but I can tell you from my personal experience, you don't have to drive a hybrid really slowly to get good fuel economy. You can accelerate because anyways, you get to speed quickly, you let go of the pedal, the accelerator sooner, and it starts recharging right off. So that's what I want to say about, hybrid head and Bronco Brain. Beware, you might get a Bronco and start feeling like you should drive over everything. And it's tempting to do so, especially when you're stuck in traffic. Now let's talk about Ford and Blue Oval City. So Ford is doing this, vast 6 square mile facilities, and it's going to be fantastic there. They're going to be creating 11,000 jobs. Now that is across 2 states. They're investing $11.4 billion. And what's really cool is this shows how we can definitely know that Ford is moving towards plug-ins and electric vehicles. First of all, Gen 2 Ford F-150 Lightning is going to be built there, so that's going to be by 2025. They're going to be creating 5,000 jobs, and where is it? I'm just going to check. 5,000 jobs in Glendale, Kentucky, and about close to 6,000 jobs in Stanton, Tennessee. So I love reading and seeing when jobs are going to be created, but even more so when it's going to be towards something that is going to be cleaner and better. And I don't find lithium batteries to be ideal. And I do want to mention Ford is working on, other minerals that can be used for batteries. And they're not the only one. Graphene manufacturing, I mentioned them about probably easily 4 months ago, but I believe it was 6 months ago. They're at about $1.50 a stock. Who knows where they'll go? Right now, they're almost at $5 a stock, and this is in Canadian dollars. But anyways, what they're working on, and this is the important part, with Queensland University in Australia. They have the technology, and you could say the patent on aluminum ion graphene batteries. So I believe they nano pierce the graphene layers. They get the aluminum ions in there. And what's important to remember about all this is that it charges 60 times faster, and it's supposed to keep the charge 3 times longer. So they built a battery for an iPhone, and this is how they prove and tested and showed that the technology works. And the company does say that by 2025, they'd like to have a battery, be able to create batteries for automobiles. Well, what would be great about that is something like the Ford Maverick, a 1.1 to let's say 2 kilowatt battery on a hybrid would probably render the vehicle 99.9% of the time electric. You'd probably fill up a tank of gas once a year, and it'd be probably part of regular maintenance to have to empty your gas at the end of the year because you filled up your 16.5 gallon tank and you only used that 4 or 5 gallons, and you have to empty it because it would charge so fast that when you do let go of the gas pedal, the battery would charge up to 100%, and then you'd have, let's say about 10, 12 minutes of driving on that battery, and you'd let it go, and then by the time you slow down for the lights or for a stop sign, the battery will have recharged. So I think that's really interesting. Now, Ford themselves, let's get back to Ford. Ford, I'm pretty interested in this. Ford and Purdue are working on charging cables that have a liquid. They're the cables themselves, the charging cables, essentially, what they can do is they can hopefully accept about 2,400 amps. So that would mean for much, much faster charging times. So it'd be done in, just a few minutes, the same way that we fill up with gas. And I guess it looks like how they're going to do that is at first the cables are going to have a liquid inside, and as they absorb transfer large amounts of electricity, that liquid's going to get really hot, but then it's going to turn into, a vapor, and that vapor will then be cooled down. So it's kind of like air conditioning for the cable itself. So they're working on super fast charging systems. If you think 20 to 30 minutes now is far too long to wait to get a quick charge in, well, what about in the future if we're looking at 2 to 7 minutes? Would that have you, and I'm just throwing that number out. That's just pure speculation. We don't have any numbers that have been released on the internet, but would that get you to drive a plug-in vehicle? I know what would get me to drive a plug-in vehicle. That's a plug-in Bronco. So plug-in Bronco, I'm certain that's happening. I'm actually thinking that, and I'm really hoping that the Raptor will have the 3-liter twin-turbo plug-in, so electric motor, that the Aviator has. This would mean it would have the potential to have 600 pound-feet of torque, somewhere around, 500, let's say maybe 450 to 510 horsepower. That would be insane. And who doesn't want to be off-roading with an electric motor? Instant torque, no turbo lag, and when you don't have turbos, what do you have? No turbos? Well, then you get your torque at high RPM, which that's not what you want when you're off-roading because things heat up. So an electric motor would just be fantastic for off-roading. And hey, I'd love to go to work 100% electric, charge up at work, and then drive home 100% electric, or even most of the time probably go to work and back home because that's about 20 miles for me back and forth to work. It's 23 kilometers each way, so about 25 miles. I'd love to be able to do that in all electric mode. Now, why do I think the Bronco is gonna have a plug-in option? And I'm hoping it won't just be for the Raptor, but we'll have to wait and see. Well, Ford's investing a ton of money for electrification, 11.4 billion for Blue Oval City. They're gonna have twin battery plants in the US. And I think that's where we're going. Spy photos taken by Ford authorities show a Bronco with camouflage covering just one spot on the vehicle. So I'm hoping that's the charge point. But either way, it's going to be very possible because Ford has already said that, you know, the T6 platform that the Bronco uses is also the platform of the Ford Ranger. And they have said that the new Ford Ranger, you know, before 2025, the new Ford Ranger we're going to be getting will be a plug-in hybrid. So the Ranger platform, which is the same as the Bronco platform, can take a plug-in. Well, then the Bronco can too. So I think that's definitely coming down the road. I think that it would make sense if they throw that plug-in onto the 2.3 liter engine. But at this point, I don't want to really say that, you know, I highly suspect, because I don't. You know, I'm just guessing it would go with the 2.3 liter power plant because that's what the Ranger is currently running. So if they add an electric motor to that, well, they've got the whole setup to then throw it into the Bronco. And I think that would make a whole lot of sense. Now, let's carry right along. So getting back to that whole fast charging, I just want to add that, you know, Tesla currently, their chargers, their super fast chargers can, you know, pump out 540 amps. And Ford and Purdue, and once again, I do hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't mean to slight anyone. They're looking at being able to do 2,400 amps. So that would be 4 times, sorry, that'd be five times, almost pretty much 5 times faster charging. So that would be incredible, because if you normally do a fast charge on 30 minutes, you do it 5 times faster. I don't think anyone's going to be complaining, because when you stop for gas, you're stopping for, you know, 3 to 7 minutes anyways, depending on how fast that gas pump is. So just before wrapping up the show, I have one last piece of information to share about electrification. I do want to say, you know, thanks for liking and subscribing. It does help feed and dress a poodle. And we're not just, you know, weird and putting a little ducky pajama on him. He actually shivers and gets cold in the house. And it's not because I'm so cheap that the house is cold. It's, I don't know, I guess it's a small dog thing. He gets cold, so we put a little clothes on him so that he's a little bit warmer. Otherwise, if he gets cold, he'll wake us up at night. So we got to dress him. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. Now, last piece of information before we wrap everything up. More evidence that Ford is really going towards electrification. Even Ford Edge ST line. So a new Ford Edge ST line that showed up at the dealership. When I turn it on and it's near empty, it asks me if I want to know where the nearest charging stations are. And on the gas trap, I'll put that on. There's an actual spot that, you know, it looks like they've covered it with this kind of like rubbery sheet covering, but it looks like it's about the shape of what a charging plug would be. So I really think that pretty much all models at Ford are going to go hybrid or plug-in. Now, Ford themselves, lately, I can't remember the spokesperson who said this, but pretty much saying that currently no plans to put the Maverick plug-in. I do expect the Maverick to go plug-in. I don't think it would have been good business to say that, you know, it will go plug-in right now, because, you know, who knows? Could very well be by generation 2. And some people will just say, oh, I'll wait till generation 2. But that'd be, you know, that'd be bad for everyone. You get a Maverick now, both engines are fuel efficient. And in 5 years, you know, if you have it on, it's still gonna, I think they're gonna hold really well their value. So it only makes sense, you know, start saving fuel now, have a nice, fantastic truck. I loved how the Maverick drove. I love the Maverick's price. I can't believe, you know, I don't expect something to be that good at the price it's being offered at. So I think it's a fantastic bang for buck. It's a barrel of laughs to drive. And, you know, normally I'm not a big fan of hybrids, but, you know, if you check out my Escape plug-in hybrid video, I really enjoyed driving that. That thing accelerated really well. I had the tires squealing by accident. It transitioned between electric motor and gasoline engine so smoothly, so well. The acceleration was really smooth and, you know, you could say linear. It didn't feel choppy, and the noise, I can't believe it's a hybrid. That sounded good. And I enjoyed the drive, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's not a CVT. So a lot of people, I think, are worried about not getting a Maverick because they figure it's a CVT. It's not your, what you could say, your traditional CVT that's belt driven, which feels elasticy, which causes all sorts of bad engine noise. This is an eCVT. It's a planetary gear set. Essentially, it's mechanical, and it is a fantastic transmission that I suspect will be really reliable. So far, it's not causing problems in, the previous hybrids that Ford has out and running on the roads. So I think that's going to be really good technology. I think it's worth jumping on, but remember, if you are thinking hybrid Maverick, order one now. Then do all your research you need to do, because you can always change your order later on or cancel it. But you won't want to miss that. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate when you watch to the end. It really helps the channel grow and get out to more people to get this information out. So thanks for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And I wish you all more cars and more power. And I do hope you get to put the pedal to the metal this week. Take care.